So welcome all of you to the Values for Life series, episode 88. It's on empathy and sympathy. And we are so fortunate to have with us a very passionate surgical nurse by profession. And thank you, Sister Moira, for joining. And Sister Moira isn't new to this audience, but it's my duty to introduce for the new people who always join. She has had a long career of being a surgical nurse by profession. And she's born and educated in Argentina itself. And at a very young age of around 24, she set out on this 2-year journey searching for the true meaning of love and even a higher purpose in life. And that's what led her to meet the Brahma Kumaris in 1986. And from there on, it's no looking back. It's almost 45 years now, 45 years. So at the moment, as we speak, she's currently the director of the Brahma Kumaris centers in Argentina. I think she would be the most apt person. No other person could do justice because as a medical or as a healthcare practitioner, I must say, there's always a tug of war and a debate going on whether we should be sympathetic towards our patients or empathetic as far as patient care goes. So she will be able to tell us the most about it. And one more thing is, Moira's sister's passion is to explore the spiritual nature of the cell and serve to connect people to themselves and the divine. So while she was, as a nurse, she was definitely serving them through the body, taking care of their physical body, but now at a very higher level, trying to help people connect themselves to the divine. And as always, Sister Moira, I must say, is very cheerful, very approachable, and very light-hearted. And before giving on to Sister Claudia to welcome her with flowers, I'll just say a few lines in the form of a poem. So today, Sister Moira shall tell us her thoughts as a nurse on empathy, so that we live in today's fast-paced world with no apathy. Let us practice looking at each soul with a lot of sympathy. That's like giving drishti, which becomes a form of naturopathy. Because in the world today of the West and India as well, we are practicing a lot of allopathy, but let's try to understand the basics of the soul through spiritual homeopathy, so that our sanskars gel well with each other and we can stay then in harmony, trying to celebrate each day auspiciously like a ceremony, where then we can rejoice and play our parts with total symphony, with no scope of someone leading others like a hegemon. You know, this world is otherwise so much behind money and more money, not realizing that we have to divorce Maya without giving any alimony. So with this, I would request, so once again, thank you, Sister Moira, for joining. Big welcome. And also over to you, Sister Claudia, for official welcome.
Good morning, good afternoon for you, probably, and then good evening for other ones. So it's a pleasure to have you, Mura, talking to us today. And this important, I think, value in people's life. Because when a doctor, a nurse, a family member, a friend has empathy for what we are going through, makes quite a difference. And I'm sure that you have this with yourself and you can share with us many, many experience about this, how to be able to listen to hear, to put it, like we say, put the other one's shoes and knows what the other one is going through. So welcome, welcome, welcome. And here I have some flowers that is like pure, white and pure. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for
Thank
being
you,
with us.
Claudia. Thank you so much. And thanks, Manoj, for that lovely introduction. Thank you all for having me with you today. This is such a beautiful family, the Values for Life family. that has been together, stays together, plays together, learns together. This is a wonder. The wonder of God, the wonder of internet, and the wonder of you all. So yes, when you gave me this topic, I was thinking, wow, if there is a call of the time, if there's something that we all need to cultivate, to emerge, to develop further, is this amazing capacity to reach out through our feelings, our understanding. And at a time when we receive all sorts of news, sympathy is right there at the tip of our fingers. This week, we were listening to our morning class, we were listening to the Murli, and one of our main teachers, she was reading this class, and her young son walked into her sitting room. It's a class where she is, and he said, "Mom, I've come to collect you because her son, this was the younger one, the one just a little older than this. She has 3 sons. The middle one had killed himself in a car accident. So she was in shock, but very, very calm. The way she took this was amazing. So it's quite interesting to see how when we have prepared for sudden things, news that could create a lot of sorrow and a lot of pain, can be faced in a different way. And of course, everyone's sympathy just showered blessings and good wishes for her, for the family, for the departed soul. And yet, what we got back was the example of someone who has deep empathy for her family, but for herself. And what she shared with us was, believe it or not, I am not suffering. And for those of you who have children, you would know how hard it must be to accept a sudden news. What happened is that this young man, he fell asleep in his car when he was driving, so he just crashed and left his body. So, but it was a very, the natural feeling of sympathy that we all have, like we want to somehow, through our good wishes, reach out. And yet she had this deep understanding of what her family was going through. She knew she was that angel in the night, the one who would bring light into that situation that they're going through, which is difficult, delicate, very painful. And she was so stable. She wrote to all of us, the BKs, and with this profound feeling of self-compassion and being able to be an instrument to hold her family, her grandchildren, and sail them through their pain, their sorrow. For us, it was it was such a powerful message, because I think we will all go through many different tests, maybe difficulties or hardships, who knows. But what we got from Alicia was this lesson that if we practice, if we become strong, then we're able to face these things, not only to be able to reach out to others, but to remain ourselves beyond pain and sorrow. So empathy being this ability to be in the full awareness of what others are going through, their feelings. And as you said, Claudia, is like stepping into someone's shoes and Whereas sympathy, we can look at it from outside, but empathy takes us a little further, where we become very aware. It's like we can feel what they feel. It's like secretly and very respectfully stepping into the privacy of someone's thoughts and feelings, and that we can perceive through their eyes, through their gestures. Because sometimes when we think of, I've just mentioned the example of a tragedy, but sometimes empathy is required in sometimes quite invisible situations in which maybe things are not expressed even, but we could know if we have that refined sensitivity that someone is unwell. Sometimes children don't show their feelings, but the way they are performing, the way they interact with other children, or the way they're managing things, we would know that something isn't right. But we need to have that deep concern, that deep awareness of perceiving the vibrations that convey the feelings, the thoughts, and what other people may be enduring. So being empathetic is like being aware. And empathy is an ingredient of compassion. And compassion would take us even a little further, in which feelings of compassion would be full of the pure desire to alleviate someone from their sorrow, their pain, their confusion, whatever it is. So it would make us available in different ways. And it requires like a big heart, a clean heart, to understand, not only to understand what others are going through, but to understand in what way I can be an instrument or someone who can offer some form of support or help. And although we know that everything happens for some reason, at the time when people have to face the result of their mistakes or their actions or the way of their interactions, when they are facing somehow, is a very strong word, like a punishment, is when we need most empathy. And, you were saying about the empathy of being a nurse. And before I became a surgical nurse, which I didn't do for too long, because I came to this knowledge and then I lived a life of service, but in a different way. When I was 15, one day I had gone, I was born in a Catholic family. So we were 4 sisters, all of us very tall, very slim and tall. And we went to church. We went to the Sunday Mass. And there was a woman there said, "Hi, all these nice looking girls, we need volunteers in a hospital." And so one of my sisters said, "Okay, I'll come." And I said, "Okay, I want to come as well." And she looked at me and said, "How old are you?" And she said, and I said, "I'm 15. And she said, "But you're not allowed to come because you can only come when you're 18. And so she had expressed the need of the people in hospital to be assisted, to be cared for, not only by medical teams. And so I said, "Well, tell the people you work for that from now on, it will be from the age of 15 because I am coming." So I bought, I needed a uniform. So I bought my uniform and I went and I said, "Look, you don't have anyone. And I may be 15, but I'm happy to be here." And for me, that was such a beautiful experience when, for example, in some wards, there were people who were prisoners, but they had been brought to the hospital, so they were under the supervision of police. And people could be looking at them as a someone very violent, as a criminal or whatever. But I was seeing them on the bed. They were going through so much pain. So I would walk into the ward and feed them or read to them, and I would sit with them. And I just felt, it doesn't really matter why they are here, or, what in the sense of why they are prisoners. The fact is that they're going through so much pain and they're alone. So this kind of awoke in me this sense of, it is so beautiful to be able to reach out and really understand what people are going through. And then there was another little boy who was born with his legs. His legs were not, they were deformed in many ways. So this little boy, he was 11, but his mind was like a little younger. And he had gone through so much surgery. So I spent hours with him. I used to go and I used to buy, school things for things for him to read and paint and write, and all the volunteers, we would be his teachers. And so, I was so aware of what this little boy was going through. He was alone. He was from the very, very south of Argentina, no family. We, the volunteers, were his family. So I used to, at the age of 15, I must confess, I used to go out at night dancing or whatever, and I would come back at 6 a.m. So this little boy wanted me to, this was on let's say a Saturday night, and he would want to go to, he said, take me to the chapel. And I don't know if he was so interested in what the priest had to say, but he wanted to go around the hospital. So I said, okay, I'll come. And that was at 9 a.m. So if I went to sleep at 6 a.m., I got up at 9 a.m. I was so sleepy, but still I went. His name was Ricardito. And I would go to the hospital, and I said, well, we go to the chapel, and then we go, for a ride around all the different floors of the hospital here and there. And we had such fun. And I just thought, this is, I was so aware of his need. He was a little boy. They didn't allow me to take him out on a wheelchair because his surgeries, he went through so much hardship, poor kid. But I just thought, I should do whatever to make this little boy feel that he's not alone and that he can play. So we used to play, we used to run around, because on the Sundays there wasn't much movement in the hospital. So we go top speed on the car with his bed, with wheels. And so there I realized how important it is to connect with what it is that people go through and in what many ways they need help. So, and compassion takes us further into really doing for alleviating. And compassion is a natural quality. It's our love expressed in so many different ways. But I think that, and sometimes, like another aspect of compassion, even empathy, is like when we have this, I was at that point, I was doing it out of a sense of charity. Now I would understand it as spiritual service, and I would probably not only take care of his physical needs, I wanted to be his friend, but I would probably go further into helping him spiritually, deeper. And sometimes we can fall into a little trap in being empathetic or even compassionate when we do a lot for others, and we feel that they need so much help. And we're living in such a world of so much need that we could be like 24 by 7 helping. So we would have compassion fatigue, and that would be because I would be maybe in the understanding that it's me, it's I, that I'm doing everything. And that would end up depleting me. So on one hand, we do need to be compassionate. We are empathetic, and we stretch out. We embrace a situation in which we are fully aware of a deep, real need. But on the other hand, that help is real help depending on the awareness in which we do it. Because when we serve from the heart, it will reach the heart and fill the heart in the awareness of being an instrument. When we, and this applies to work, to families, wherever we are, we can always be an instrument in which we have a higher awareness where we're not alone in helping, because sometimes we could feel very frustrated in face of the need of the time when we hear the terrible news and of things that are happening around the world, even around us. And there's literally nothing physical that we can do, but there's really no limits to compassion, to an empathetic vision and feeling in which we want to assist, we want to be present in some way. And this is where understanding our thought power and the power of vibrations, and this is where we can reach far and wide. And I think this happened so much, especially during the pandemic, in which so many people were in grief, so many lost their dear ones and near ones, but they were unable to be with them, to see them. I was one of them. My dad left and I couldn't, we just left him in the hospital, and then they gave us back a dead body. So we couldn't be with him. But we know that we can reach out, understanding the loneliness. My father was left on his own. His family couldn't access him. He was so desperate. And I don't think he died of COVID. I think he died of sadness. But I had this very pure intention that, to reach out with my thoughts and my feelings, my good wishes, saying, Dad, you are not alone. You are not alone. Our energy is around you. Our energy is embracing you. And this was someone very near to me. But then when we hear the things happening around the world, we always want to do something. And when we hear someone is sick, and some people will pray, others will have positive thoughts, others can sit in meditation. And this is a very empathetic thing to do, to reach out, because we are in that awareness of how much pain someone or how lonely or unsafe someone could be feeling. And I think we have to become very aware that we have this power and that we can reach out, and that our presence is felt even if we're not there. It needs a very clean vision, a very clean understanding that it would also not just be my energy. It would also not just be my power, my strength. And this is where I think that being empathetic becomes so unlimited, because we connect to the supreme source, and if we contemplate on his qualities and we allow that to be channeled through my thinking, through my feelings, then there's nothing we can't do at a time of need, when we become aware of what the need is. When people need love, when people need courage, when people need some motivation. And sometimes we think of being compassionate or empathetic in situations in which things are really strong. But maybe around us, in our families, at our workplace, there's someone who has lost the motivation and is working in a kind of automatic pilot mode, and nothing is making too much sense. So he'll become grumpy or resentful, or when we are unhappy, it will show somehow. And this is where we also need to be very sensitive as a team leader. I heard something that I liked, that a CEO stands for Chief Empathetic Officer. And I thought that was very interesting, because I mean, someone can be very executive and very professional and very efficient, but today, what really makes the difference to leadership is our level of empathy, our ability to really understand what people are going through. I can tell you here in Argentina, I don't know if we're in the news, but I think of Argentina as the last corner of the world. I don't know if you get news of Argentina and India, for example, maybe not. But I can tell you a little bit of what's going on. It's really wild. And, we have a new president. He's a liberal. We've gone through decades of socialism, with extreme corruption, extreme. So this president is trying to lift the sunken Titanic from the bottom of the sea with a completely bankrupt economy. And, we have 240% inflation a year. So can you imagine? You go shopping in the morning, at lunchtime, it's a different price. And if you want to quote something, we are renovating our new center in Buenos Aires, and I ask for a quotation, and they tell me, well, we want to put new windows. They say, okay, this price is only for today. Tomorrow it might change. So you kind of have to decide and, take action immediately. So you can imagine the level of anxiety that there is tremendous. The peso is completely devaluated. And so he's trying to stabilize things, but at an incredibly high cost of quality of living. And many of the youth of this country have left. And what's happening right now is that because the government, the body of the government as an institution became so extremely big in the form of abuse, of corruption, and now he's cutting it down so drastically, so many thousands and thousands and thousands of people are being sacked, so there's this unemployment. So this leads to so much chaos, really. So on one hand, the government will have to support them in another way because they have no jobs. So people are in so much fear. So when we, at our BK centers, when people come to us, we know that they are highly sensitive to whatever we say. So we have to say things very, very carefully. And I think that being very tactful is a very gentle, subtle aspect of empathy. Because on the other hand, being a little bit more, I would say, concrete, we know of the law of karma, right? We know that everything that happens for some reason. And we all get the fruit of the seeds that we plant in our minds, in our hearts, in the form of thoughts and feelings, and the decisions that we take as from that. So then we experience the consequence, because even in the hardest of times, some people manage in a very graceful way to sail through, and others get stuck in their own consequences. But I mean, we could be kind of very crude and say, well, this happened to you because you must have made a mistake. That would be zero empathetic, zero tactful. And we also know that truth is what is required, clarity of understanding. So when we are moved by empathy, we would want souls to understand or help them understand what could make them move forward, what will take them to a different place in their own lives. But the way we spend time with them. It's like being very, very precise in what we say and when we say things. People may not be ready to know why things have happened. And they will, this is a question, they will say, why did it happen to me? Why did this happen? Why to us? You know, like the first thing when people are going through a big problem, it's like playing a victim. And so how can we come across in a very, it's like giving ourselves giving from ourselves power that will, the form of vibrations, of presence, of a very loving, caring vision that we can hold of them. Because when someone is very weak, even if they understand the truth of what took them there or what made them like that, it wouldn't help. It wouldn't really help. What they need is to be held, like a mother. When a child comes, they might have, lost their jacket at school. They might have broken their, I don't know, their toys or their belongings or even their clothes. They might even come back hurt, never mind angry or complaining. But the mother will first of all embrace them, and then she will listen to them, and then she will clean them, and then she will feed them, make them warm, make them feel at home. And then she'll probably, come to know that he did something very wrong or something that was not allowed and that took him there. And then maybe there'll come a time when that truth, that light that will create a clear path forward will be useful. But what we do at the very moment in which something is happening is we have to donate, we have to bestow power. If someone is peaceless, but I need to be peaceful myself. So I think self-compassion and being very empathetic about my needs is top of the list, because how could I help if I become peaceless because of what others are going through? So this is where I was telling you that Alicia became such a powerful example for us, which, we were also very surprised by the news we got. She was in shock for a moment, but then she said, I'll interrupt this class. Someone else continued reading the Murli class of the morning. And, everybody wished her well, and she was very cool, and then she left. But how could she be? And then she wrote to us and said, I am amazed at the shower that I'm perceiving of God's love and God's light. And she said, it's as if he's shining light on my home, not only on me, but on my home and my family. Like we're all in an orb of light. I said, well, how does she get there? She can be the help and that angel in the night for her family, because she has, and I have witnessed how much she has cared for herself. How ready, I don't think anybody is ready to receive the news that your child has left in an accident. I don't think anybody can be ready. But in a way, she had taken so much care of herself, understanding, and I know how much she is always very truthful, and someone who faces uncomfortable feelings about the self, and being okay, it's okay, and then setting on the real work to transform that. So this self-compassion, this taking care of the self, is what is so crucial, and it requires spending time with myself in reflective silence that will, silence is such a power that it will reveal everything about me. This month of February, when I went to India, we were in ORC, our beautiful retreat center in Delhi, in Gurgaon, and we were doing an experiment. Normally we do silence retreats there, and we do many different nice things. We read, we listen, we do meditations, we do a lot of journaling during the silence retreats. But this time we did something that Asha Didi, our teacher, our instrument, our senior in ORC, exposed us to. And she said, you know, in your practice of silence, you people get very entertained. And she said, but you don't become that powerful. So we said, okay. And so she said, you know, at the beginning, on the foundation of the Brahma Kumaris, there was Brahma Baba and there was Mama, a co-founder of the Brahma Kumaris. And she said to us, Mama was a very young girl when she came, and she was this spiritual giant who practiced very silently, a high level of awareness of who she is and who she belongs to, and her ability to draw the power from the supreme, the source of love, of truth, of peace. And so Asha Didi said, Mama and Baba used to have us in complete silence and had us practicing different states of awareness. And so she said, Baba used to put us in a room and said, you don't need to do anything. You just need to practice. So he'd give us a thought, leave us a couple of hours, would come again, give us some more, and like this. And then at some point, they would come, both Mama and Baba. This was very fortunate. We don't have that fortune. But they would come and sit and look at them. I give them drishti, this soul-to-soul vision, shared vision, that would really empower and help them cleanse, help them face themselves. And so she told us this is what we used to do, and we used to fly. We were so happy in this practice. So spending time inside, so we decided to experiment on this. So we spent 4 days in ORC in this complete silence. We spent 8 hours in meditation. It's not that I'm saying that you should do this. It's just that this is what we practiced. And the person who was guiding us said, whatever undone homework, whatever undealt business, you know, in terms of transformation, in terms of growth, in terms of, you know, overcoming my own limits, my own defects, weaknesses, whatever undone things will all pop up when I am in silence. And you know, it's exactly what happened. We spent 4 days, and to be very honest with you, it took me 2 days to kind of quieten my mind, which was all over, and facing myself. So I think if we really want to be very honest in terms of being able to reach out to people and make a difference in their lives, we need to have done that homework ourselves. And so it requires a lot of courage to face the self. To face the self will reveal to us not only what is undone homework, let's say, but it will also reveal our beauty. It will reveal our real power, our very DNA of the soul. And this is where from, when we are able, even though I'm peaceless, worried, or I feel humiliated, or whatever I need to heal from, and when I give myself a chance to cleanse my heart, to let go of the past, that is being empathetic, compassionate with myself. Whatever I do with myself is what I will be able to offer others in need. And when I say letting go, you know, if I have this little clock with me to keep track of the time, but if I let it go, you say, okay, she's let go a clock. But how do I let go of resentment? How do I let go of deep hurt? It might be trauma coming from my childhood. It could be something that I'm facing at work. I could be going through bullying if I'm a child at school. I could be in a crisis if I'm in a marriage or within the family. So letting go is about creating. Letting go is about stop feeding the feeling by giving the situation, the incident, or the whatever I feel is the reason for my hurt. Stop giving it my attention. And it's like a paradox because I need to put full attention to my own needs, and yet I need to take my attention out of pain. I need to be able to move on. I need to let go. So I need to focus on what it is that I want. So, for example, if children are going through bullying and they are very hurt, normally they're not heard at school. So they come and tell their parents. And what happens sometimes, at least here, people go and complain at schools and they're not heard. But on one hand, he's been hurt, he feels unsafe, so he now is heard. So we have to do something about it. So we need now to focus on what he needs. What he needs. That might take the parents to change him from the school. So the focus to let go of that which is hurting me or hurt me in the past, which I have fed by looking at it again and again and again, or playing a victim again and again and again, has tied me to the habit, the sanskar of pain, of sorrow. So now I need to go beyond that and look into myself deeper to that source where I am a peaceful being, where I am naturally a loving soul. And it's much easier said than done, because that's not something that we can do without the divine assistance of my divine parent, because bypassing the ego that has me trapped in a limited vision of me, or if I go back to the idea of being empathetic, to be trapped in the vision of an incident or something that someone is going through, I also need to go beyond that when I want to help them. So in order to do that, I need to practice myself to heal, to move on. And what pulls me forward, I can't remember the word in English. You know, when cars tie themselves, you tie a car to a tree and it pulls it out of the mud. In Spanish, it's malacate. I don't know what word it is in English. But what drives me forward is the attraction, the magnetism of God's love. And that is the healing power. That is what is required for everything and anything, anywhere in the world, by everybody. So unless I am able to draw that strength, unless I am able to cleanse my heart, my vision of my own past, of the people I live with, from whom I become a victim, it's only because I have not looked at myself enough to realize that I am powerful. But that awakening of that vision of acceptance of who I am will come from looking at myself in the mirror of God's vision of me. So this is when not only being in silent reflection means looking at myself and, becoming aware of things that I want to transform and becoming aware of my power, but also stretching out to the recognition of whom I belong to and who is my source. Overcoming my ego, which is the source of all sorrow, of all pain, would take me to give a leap, a jump into a higher level of consciousness in which I can become impregnated of divine energy, which is pure. Energy that is pure will cleanse. So if my vision of me is of very low self-esteem, of total lack of confidence, then unless I have, I can recreate myself in the eyes of someone who trusts me, who has hope in me, and who loves me unconditionally, I would only be just, going round and round in the soup of my weaknesses. So this is so essential. And when I connect with the source of love, and I take myself to that, into his presence of someone who knows me forever, forever in the past, forever in the future, eternally. Someone who accepts me, someone who has the highest possible vision of me. In his vision, I'm able to understand how all this sorrow and pain and resentment and things that I have accumulated as traumas and so many hardships in my life are not really part of me. They don't belong to me. And when we do this inner work with ourselves, we will become someone who will be able to walk others through the path of healing, taking them back to their own highest truth of who they are, because we cannot solve anything for anyone, but we can inspire others to go within and reconnect with who they really are. I mean, when a patient, I really felt I was useful when I used to go to the hospital, and I used to go to the wards and feed people and read to them and sit with them. I used to sometimes go and buy some things for them. I felt that I was very useful, but I couldn't do much more at that time. The healing, the recovery, the journey is a personal journey, but we can inspire others. If we can also have an elevated vision of others, other than seeing them as a sick body, we can see them as a soul who is strong, who is complete, who is powerful. And this is just a temporary circumstance. And I want to tell you a little story. Our very dear Daddy Janki, who passed away in 2020, she was someone who throughout her life, I met her when she was 70. She left at the age of 104 in 2020. So I had those wonderful years in which I had the chance to learn from her. But she was someone whose body was quite fragile. And we very often heard Daddy's health is unwell. Sometimes we were waiting for her in class and said, well, Daddy won't be able to attend because her health is not well. And once we asked her, Daddy, how are you? And so she said, can't you see? And so it really made us think, are we thinking that she is a body, or are we talking to the soul? Because what was unwell was the body. But if you really looked at Daddy into her eyes, if you were in her presence, you would know that Daddy was incredibly powerful, incredibly healthy, incredibly, loving and peaceful. And in her presence, whatever we went with when we were, in a little bit of trouble or complaint or whatever about ourselves or even others, it just in her presence, Daddy would say, Bolo. She'd look at us and say, Bolo, say something. And so we would tell her whatever story we came with, and she would minimize it to nothing. Once I came to her and I was complaining. I was very young, BK in Argentina, very young. And our center coordinator was a bit tough with me. And so I felt I was playing the victim. And I said, oh, Daddy, she treats me so badly, so badly. And so I went on. And Daddy just looked at me and said, she really is your best friend. And I said, oh, Daddy didn't understand anything I said. So I told her again. And so she said, but she's a friend. And when I got back to Argentina, I was a little bit disappointed with what Daddy told me. But it was a seed she was planting in my mind. And this was her level of deep understanding of what I needed. I didn't need to be someone to support me in playing the victim. I needed someone to say, wake up, you have the power. But she didn't say that. She just said, she's your friend. And so a few years, I think that same year, actually, no, a couple of years later, I went to live to Chile. Chile is the end of the world. It's by a mountain range, all these mountains covered in snow. And I was walking towards the mountains in the city. And I was, in my mind, I was fighting and fighting with this sister. Her name was Murti. And I was saying, if she tells me this, I'll tell her this. And this kind of confusion that makes you so upset. And suddenly, Daddy's voice echoed in my mind. She's your friend. And then I kind of laughed at the whole situation. I said, I'm on this side of the Andes, the mountain range, like the Himalayas, actually. So I'm on this side, and I'm in Chile, and she's on the other side, 1,500 kilometers away from here, must be working, doing what? And here I am fighting and creating a story in my mind. And Daddy's words, she's your friend. And so I thought, what I'm doing is an illusion. It's not true. This sister must be working, doing her life, peacefully probably. And I'm fighting with her as a warrior. And that brought me to something much deeper. I said, I wonder if everything I went through when I was there with her was also an illusion. And that really made me think, when we play the victim, it's always an illusion. But if Daddy, the way she helped me at that time was however little much I could take, because I was very weak. So she was so kind to just say something that would at some point make me laugh, but that itself would take me to a much deeper realization that we're never the victims of anything. No one ever is. But there's a way of reaching out to make sense, to give comfort, to support, to make others grow. There's a time, and we each one have a rhythm, a way of learning. So being empathetic and compassionate, which is stepping in, not only because I understand the need, but because I'm willing to give the best of myself from deep within as an instrument, knowing, because Daddy never took the credit of what she offered to us. We always knew that she was God's instrument. We always knew that she was offering us what she was being empowered by, which was the relationship with the Supreme, but also what she had learned face to face with Brahma Baba, our founding father, the one who was most empathetic, most compassionate, because he had the greatness of transforming and being, taking such care of himself that he would become an example to even millions of people who would never see him, but would be inspired by his own self-respect, by his own self-compassion. So I can only go back to the example of the daddies and the foundation of our university. Brahma Kumaris is a spiritual university, from where I've learned really what makes my life so meaningful, and where I can help ignite meaning and awaken that meaning in the life of others. So I'll stop here, Manoj, and over to you.
So much. It was wonderful listening. And so you've covered a lot on empathy and sympathy. The question is again boils down to the back to square one. As doctors, someone is asking, he's saying, ask Sister Moira, should I be empathetic or sympathetic towards my patients? Should I consume and feel their pain and be in empathy, or just understand that they are in pain and be sympathetic?
Well, I think I researched a little bit about the meaning of empathy, and from a psychological point of view, it means like feeling what others feel. But from a spiritual perspective, I think you need to be both. You need to be very aware, and you know, you patients go through such hardship and they leave, so you have to be very sympathetic to their families. You know, the way you will inform about a diagnosis or someone having left in a surgery, or so many situations that you as healthcare professionals face. But I don't think we can become aware of the feelings of others, but it doesn't mean that I need to start feeling the way the other person feels, because then I would also need help. And this is where love and detachment play together, because you can come across with the most caring nature as a scientist, as a professional healthcare, as a doctor or a nurse or someone in the field. But it doesn't mean you need to suffer yourself what your patients suffer. You can't, because this would be, from the point of view, in Christianity, this is the belief. I suffer because you suffer. And this is, my sacrifice. I empathize with you because I suffer exactly the way you suffer. And spiritually, a spiritual perspective of empathy doesn't imply you to suffer. It implies you to relieve the suffering of others from your own caring nature. And this, seeing you, Dr. Mehta, I remember when we were together in Chile, you came to visit us many years ago. You said something to me with such feelings. I remember the way you spoke to doctors created so much hope, because in a way you came across with such humility that it made them think that there's another level of playing that role. Sometimes doctors can be seen as very arrogant by the patients, by the nurses, and the way you spoke was so humble. And you said something to me, you being a surgeon of neck, I think it is your specialty. You said, I have gifted hands. Never has someone died in my hands. You said it when you showed me your hands. You were talking as a surgeon, but I saw your hands holding your patients with such love, with such care, and I think that, and I've seen you talking to people. I know someone whom you diagnosed of breast cancer, and the way you made that person feel safe in your hands. You performed the surgery at the Global Hospital, but and she kept saying, it's the love in his eyes that made me feel so safe. So I don't think you were feeling, the pain that she was feeling in her body. You were not suffering. You were being the instrument that would empower her in a way that would allow her to have the courage to accept and to face it, and then to walk through the healing. I think that you as doctors are but on the other hand, you need to protect yourself, because the vibration of pain and sorrow, I would say this to everyone in the world, the vibration is so heavy. I feel it, walking in the streets, whatever shop I go into, people are so stressed, they are so harsh, they're being aggressive, the way they speak to you, even a taxi driver, because everybody's concerned that they're becoming bankrupt, basically. And so wherever, we need to protect ourselves. And we can only protect ourselves if we are full ourselves. That would put us in a mode of giving rather than taking. Because being empathetic is not about taking, it's about offering, it's about vibrating, it's shining your light into the light of others. When you give a diagnosis, the words you choose to speak, you could have your patient walk out of your office devastated, hopeless, or with the courage and the guts to do whatever you will indicate, will help them. And it's just that choice of, and the words will carry the feelings behind them that are in your heart, how much you care for people, how much you are able to understand what they're going through and what they will have to face, And sometimes doctors choose to give information very, in little bits at a time, and they know it all, but of course they also have to see how things evolve. But I would see how maybe the conversation in the operating theater was one, but when they speak to the patients, they probably speak very little, just to create hope, just to encourage them to be able to go step by step through whatever recovery or whatever they have to face, especially when it comes, if someone is in a hospice with patients that will leave soon, very soon, you will try to give them hope until the last breath, knowing that they will leave, and then knowing that they will leave. But in what way do we, if you were to take the sorrow that they are going through, you would collapse, really.
Yes, fantastic. So good you spent 10 minutes explaining, and it's a very important fact you said, that have this consciousness of being an instrument. So here comes that if we shift from role consciousness to soul consciousness, it will become much more easier to give compassion. And again, I am not a doctor. I am a soul playing the role of a doctor, and the patient in front of me is also not a patient. It's a soul playing the role of a patient. And then these words become very small, empathy and sympathy. Then it's like we transcend to a higher level called compassion. And that's what you've been explaining, and very rightly said that we should not be undergoing the same pain which the patient is going through, because I have to treat him, because if I am also in suffering, how can I treat someone else? So fantastic. So as you rightly said, we need to have both, a bit of both sympathy and empathy, but more of compassion. Okay, you spoke about detachment as well. I'm coming to a question because it was mentioned that a surgeon is able to cut on other patients, perform procedures because he's not attached to them. Whereas if a surgeon's own relative, maybe his son, his wife, etc.
Manoj, I'm losing you. Can you hear me? I can hardly hear you now. I'm not hearing you.
So how is it?
Manoj, can you repeat?
Now?
Yeah,
I
now
now
it's
hear
good.
you.
Now it's good. We couldn't hear you almost 1 minute. Maybe you can repeat, brother. We can hear you now.
Okay.
No,
Manoj, you have to
it's frozen.
Oh, he's frozen again. Okay. I thought it was me. Okay.
So, okay.
I can't hear.
So, I don't know whether I'm audible now. I am?
Yes, now yes. Yes,
No?
yes. You were referring to a surgeon operating a relative, something like this, but I couldn't hear well.
Yes, absolutely. So how can a surgeon practice detachment, and can he operate on his relatives? Is it so easy to practice detachment?
Well, I don't think it is allowed for surgeons to operate on relatives. At least I know that not in Argentina, but I don't know in India. I think it would be best to take the help of some. You could probably participate in the surgery in some way, but I don't think I'd take full responsibility for a relative. I don't know. Dr. Mehta, you should answer that question, but I think that detachment goes beyond like even the medical profession. It's like being we can be affectionate, we can be very present, we can be very aware, but detachment protects us from being affected. It's not being indifferent, it's not being uncaring. It is facing it in the midst of imagine the police. If they have to interact, they have to be detached, they have to be beyond the sensitivity of what is happening, otherwise they would not be able to do whatever work they have to do. And, you know, once here in Argentina, we had a very big tragedy, a nightclub with many, many youth. 200 youth died, actually. They were burnt. It was a massive tragedy. And so when the ambulances arrived, the doctors, all these kids, as they managed to pull them out of this nightclub, they were in a mess, can you imagine? And many were dying, others were yelling. It was such chaos. And the doctors had at that point to decide who they would assist. There were 200 kids. Some were dead, some were dying, some were on the way. And so the press was very hard on the doctors because they said, how could you choose this one yes and this one not? And they said, well, we had to very quickly discern where we could be of any help, because some people had hope that you could save them. Others, there was no hope because they would die anyway. So very hard for a doctor to decide in very extreme situations. But unless they have that, you know, that space of discernment in which they're able to decide and act upon that, how could they do it? If they had to be stronger than the situation itself. And this is what detachment gives us, strength to be able to see clearly and to be able to play our part without being affected in any field, medical field or any field. And it can only come, you know, we will feel right by doing whatever we do if we know that we come from a space of love. We're doing our best. We will always give the best. And this is the compassion that will shine through whatever you do.
Right. I'll just try switching off my video so that my audio doesn't cut. I'll do that. I think that's better because the signal here has become poor. So I'm sure I'm audible now. You spoke
Yes.
about compassion in relation to empathy and sympathy. I wanted you to throw a little bit of light on what's mercy, because as a Catholic and as a practicing Christian, Jesus has always said God is mercy. He never said God is compassion. And also, what is pity? Is there a difference between pity and mercy? Should we be having pity towards people or mercy?
Yes. Well, mercy, from my understanding, is that, you know, someone who has mercy for you will not only have the feelings of what you, the clarity of what you need, but also will teach you to do what you have to do. In our practice in the Brahma Kumaris, this phrase of have mercy for yourself, God has mercy for his children. This is why he as a source will teach us, will guide us, will care for us, will protect us. But on the other hand, we have to have mercy for ourselves. And that is for us to do the right thing. It's connected to self-care, to do the right thing. It's like the light of truth that I need to follow when I'm merciful for myself. I should not neglect what is my responsibility and leave it in the hands of God's mercy as if he could do for me whatever I'm not willing to do for myself. And it doesn't happen that way because, you know, ultimately I am the one, let's say I'm the player playing the game. So God can teach me to be a good player, but he won't play the game for me. But he's merciful enough to teach me to become the best player I can possibly be. But then I have to go into the field and play the game. So being merciful with myself is taking responsibility for my self-care, to be truthful, to be honest, to acknowledge my weaknesses, to be able to acknowledge my mistakes, that will put me in his light, to be able to cleanse and to heal. But unless, even if God wants to help me because he's merciful, if I don't expose myself to him, if I don't open my heart to him, then he can't help. I mean, God's love is so healing and unconditional. He could heal the whole of humanity in one stroke. But it really depends on us remembering him. And I'm using the word remembrance because I'm in a little campaign to demystify the word meditation. Because meditation is associated to so many icons that confuse. You know, if we tell people you have to meditate all day, and they think they should be sitting like this with their legs crossed in a beautiful deck with a beautiful scenario in front, you would think, well, meditation is for people who have all their bills paid, nothing to do, so they meditate. And yet, when we think of remembrance, is being aware, being awake, and taking responsibility for who I am, and learning, taking the help that I need. You know, if you're in trouble, mercy for myself would be to learn and to take help. It's not that because I'm in trouble, someone should come and do something about me. So it's very interesting. And pity, I always tell myself, pity is in the domain of ego. Ego doesn't understand the depth of truth. It doesn't understand the soul. Therefore, it doesn't understand karma. So when we feel pity, it's because we don't understand the reason behind things. You know, I want to tell you an experience that I had in Chile. Do I have a couple of minutes, Manoj? Yeah, you know, I was living in Chile. There was a street called Orphans. The name of the street was Orphans. Can you imagine? And it was a walking street. It was not for cars. So in that street, the government had kindly set up tables, many tables, all along the street for a few blocks. There were these tables where the disabled people could come and sell things. So the government gave them a chair, gave them a table with a tablecloth, and they could legally sell whatever little bits and things they could sell. So people would very kindly go there and buy little bits to help these disabled people who had a little source of income. And I was teaching English to some business people, and I had to walk through that, you know, along that road, that street, to reach this company. So every morning when I used to walk there, I used to tell myself, there were all these disabled people with, you know, they looked with different disabilities. If I walk with pity from a body conscious perspective, in the mirror of my eyes, they will see themselves as bodies, disabled bodies. Because pity, it would be me thinking, how come these people are like this? Why did this happen? How unfair this is? Because I would see them as victims of life somehow. But if I walked through in soul conscious, I felt I should be compassionate. And what would they see in the mirror of my eyes if I look at someone with compassion? They will see themselves as a soul. And the soul is whole. So they would see themselves as a powerful being. So when we feel pity, it's because we are disconnected with the reason of whatever I am seeing. And things do happen for something, but it was not my business to walk past them. I used to say, you're my brother souls, you know? That was one thought. The other one was, I feel compassion and I see you with hope. You're working, you have that dignity, you know? And when we think of someone as a soul, there are no limits to the soul. But when we think of someone as a body, they were in such a level of restriction. You see? So it's very different because ego can only feel pity. But in a spiritual, in a higher consciousness or awareness, we feel compassion. So it's not pity, it's full of understanding because we know things happen for some reason, but we're there. I'm not someone to question, what did you do to, you know, to put yourself in this situation? That's not my business. I'm there to shine whatever light from my thoughts and my feelings can vibrate towards you.
Yes, that's a wonderful explanation. And since we are running out of time, I'll take the last question. As healthcare professionals, we commit some mistakes, and those mistakes can be very unpardonable. it can take someone's life, and we can really have lifelong grievance over that. And it's very difficult to forgive oneself. So do you want to touch upon, because you spoke about having compassion for the self and mercy for the self. So how do we forgive our mistakes, and how do we have compassion for the self after committing such horrible mistakes which can take someone's life?
Yes, yes. I've seen malpractice, but I think that if a doctor makes a mistake and can admit that that was a mistake, and they might have to face not only professional consequences but also legal consequences. If the person takes full responsibility, that will make their heart peaceful. And then, because the loss is maybe there's nothing, I mean, it could be the death or some other thing that can't go back to, it's irreversible, that's what I mean. I think that we can take refuge. I mean, asking for forgiveness, taking full responsibility at whatever level is required is the first step. But then to make your heart content, I think you need to take the refuge of God's love and come to Him. I would say to her, I would come to God as my mother. You know, if little children make mistakes, they probably won't run into the father's lap, they'll run into the mother's lap. And I think that even if a doctor is a grown-up man and mature and responsible and generous and professional and makes a mistake, he is always also a child that can take forgiveness from the lap of God, the mother, and take refuge in unconditional love. And okay, that may not have any, reverse, but I can move forward. I can fill myself, heal my heart, help those to whom I've caused damage in some way, significant way. And that may be keeping contact, somehow. And allow God to heal your wound, your hurt. Because, I mean, making a mistake is also human. So I think there's some things are a loss for them forever, but on the other hand, I can move on. That might take me to a lot of deep, significant realizations that will enable me to become empathetic with other people when they go through similar things. I'll be able to help them. But I must know that there is forgiveness. I must know that I can heal.
Yes, absolutely. So I think we all have to take a refuge in God, who is the ultimate supreme healer. And that's the reason he's called supreme. And as you rightly said, it's good to say she, because it's the motherly aspect of God which helps us in healing. And as you rightly pointed out about how a mother takes care of kids, you said when you started the talk. Thank you so much. And I think, unfortunately, I'm in ORC actually. That's not unfortunate, but it's it's just that this Wi-Fi, it was quite stormy suddenly out of the blue. And it was, so I don't know, the Wi-Fi has been a little bit on and off. And I think we have lost Dr. Mehta because he's in Mount Abu. Some reason he suddenly went off.
No,
So,
he's here. Dr.
Oh.
Mehta's here.
because his video is not being seen. Now he is, yeah. Okay. So anyway, so I'll pass it on to Dr. Mehta. Yeah. Over to you for the vote of thanks.
Are you able to hear me? Are you able to hear me?
Yes,
Yes, Dr. Mehta, we can hear
Okay.
you.
We have a lot of affinity for each other. I wanted to ask a very simple question. For example, I was a great admirer of Gandhian philosophy, And when I heard for the first time shooting of Martin Luther King, the tears were rolling down my eyes because he was a Gandhian and he was during his march. Similarly, when President Mandela's story when I heard, I used to have a feeling and tears would fill those eyes. What would you call this? I think it's empathy, sympathy, uh, compassion. I don't know, but I think I call it a sanskars. The sanskars that the soul carries with it, uh, and this is emotional feelings that when you hear of people being hurt or killed. At the same time, when I worked as a surgeon, I think it was exactly the other way around. I was, I was, including my wife's sister, when I was very early years of my practice. But I think it happens when you in institutions that uh, you have a team of people, so you don't feel isolated. It's not in private practice. So I think that makes a lot of difference in what circumstances you're operating on the patients. I still recollect my days of my training when I had my first major surgery given to me as a house surgeon. And this was for a cancer of the anal canal. And this man was very elderly, almost in his 70s. He had no friends, no relatives, except one nephew who had also had a hunchback and no money, obviously. I still recollect that every medicine I had in my drawers, I used to go and give it to him. Used to give him all kinds of proteins, build him up, gave him several bottles of blood, but I operated on this man, and that this I still recollect. It was my first major operation, doing an abdominoperineal resection and I used to go and see him at least 3 to 4 times in a day, and I think this, whether you call it empathy, sympathy, but it's more like a personal involvement with the patient. So
Love, pure love, Dr. Mehta. Pure love.
so I have people through the thicks and thins. In a cancer, you operate at the early stage, but when they reach the late stage, nobody wants to see them. Only nowadays, the systems of reference, you send him away to a radiation oncologist or you send him away to a medical oncologist. But most of the time, I followed them up, even if they were being treated by a medical oncologist I used to look after all of them. And I think personal involvement with patient is very important part of your training. I don't know whether you would call it empathy. I never felt drained out, as people would expect that if you are empathetic, you drain yourself out and you suffer. It's the other way around, I suppose. The more empathy you have, you feel that you are more stronger. I don't know.
So compassionate.
Sometimes
You mentioned Martin Luther King. I was researching a little bit, and this is sympathy is the personal concern which demands the giving of one's soul. This is from Martin Luther King Jr. I found this. I took note of that. So beautiful. I mean, I think it's just your pure love, Dr. Mehta, that allowed you to stretch out even further, to follow, as you just explained, being with your patients till much further from the surgery itself. Beautiful.
I think we carry our sanskars. For example, when I came for the first time, following operating on Ladi Gulzar to Mount Abu, on that day, 2 people got heart attacks. And, I often felt that we should, at that point, I was feeling, even before this heart attack, that we should have a hospital here because the beautiful natural surroundings, the mountains, the lake, the trees, and the beautiful atmosphere. But when this happened, these 2 people got heart attack during my stay for 3 days. Within 3 days, the dream of the global hospital and the mission hospital came to me at that point of time. And I felt that we should create something. So whenever get a challenge, it's a time for you to work up. And I think that's where the emotion part, that's where the sentimental part of it, whether you call it empathy or sympathy, but I think this is where you want to work on. I think it works both ways. It works in a creative way as well. I felt that this sympathetic and empathetic approach helped us to set up the hospital in this far off place when the things were not so easy. Today, the things are much easier with technology and even transport. In those years, the transport was very difficult. The roads were very small. It used to take hours to travel. There were very few airlines, only one flight a day in Ahmedabad. So I think it's very important that we have that empathy and sympathy both with us and work on it. And I think compassion is the ultimate. And that's what we are here to learn from Baba. Baba is changing our sanskars. He's taking us from the Ravan sanskar to that of Ram. We are from a human being, he is making us a deity. This sanskars, I think, we are learning here at the university. Thank you very much. I've enjoyed when listening to you.
Thank you.
Warsi experience was also very great. Of silence for 4 days. Yeah, good.
Yes,
Om
thank you
Shanti.
very much, Moira. It was very nice to see the different angles that you brought about empathy. And most important is, like Dr. Mehta said, that we have to have that empathy as a sanskar, as inside the self. If we don't have that feeling of empathy for the self, actually, we cannot have empathy for others. So we have to have that feeling of compassion in our sanskars. So when we see something happening or something, we are always ready to be able to share some love, some whatever the other soul needs. So it was very nice to hear from you all the different angles of this so important subject. And we all need to have, no matter if a doctor or whatever it is we all need that sanskars of compassion, of love for each other, especially nowadays that the world is going through so much turbulence. So we have to have, even for nature too. So we have to empathize with all the problems, everything is how much suffering is there and how much we can help. So that feeling of help. And I think Dr. Mehta has to have, we congratulate him because it's so much that hospital. I start coming doing volunteer at the hospital many years ago, around 30 years ago. Hospital was still growing. And I just think when he started, how was that time? When you see the hospital now, it's quite a different situation was that time. So it is his love, his empathy for the patients, how much the patient needs, that make him to have that thought about doing. So thank you very much, Moira, and always a pleasure to have you with us. So come back and come.
Claudia, can I offer you Tolis?
Oh,
This
yes.
this
Yes,
is
please.
a minute. This is non-vegan, and
Oh.
this is vegan. So for both of you.
Thank
So with
you.
love from Argentina.
Thank you. One day I'll go there to eat.
And send my love to everyone in ORC, Manoj.
Yes, thank you so much. And you didn't give me the toli, but I got it. No worries. That's
Vegan
okay.
or non-vegan? Yeah,
Both,
Manoj.
both.
Both.
So thank you so much, once. And I'll just pass it on to Sister Anu for the quick announcements, take the photograph, and then we'll do the closing meditation. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. For such a wonderful sharing. And can you hear me all? Yes, now it is working. Sometimes technology is good as well as difficult. So really, the subject of empathy, sympathy, and hearing from all of you, Sister Claudia, Dr. Mehta, and Sister Moira, is wonderful. I'm sure all of our hearts are full with this beautiful, loving energy. So next week, after 1 week, as we always do, we'll have our workshop on empathy and sympathy. Further, we'll explore on this value. And for that, we'll have Sister Judy from Calgary and Sister Tanya from Montreal. So both are sisters, as you can see it on the photos as well. So it will be wonderful conversation style. Another insightful talk and meditation by both of them after the 1 hour experiential exercises. So it is on 20th of April, Saturday, same time, 7 a.m. West Coast time, 7:30 p.m. India time. And our next session of Values for Life series is episode 89 on equanimity or balance, in Hindi Sambhav. And for that, we'll have Brother Ken from Brazil. He's the regional coordinator of Brahma Kumaris in Latin America. So it is happening 2 weeks after Saturday, 27th of April, same time. So we'll look forward to have you all then. And check us out on our websites, vihasa.in and vancouver@brahmakumaris.ca. All the videos in all the languages you'll find on our YouTube channels, as well as these are the playlist for all the episodes if you like to check. Thank you, everyone. And yes, it's time for photo. As we always have our photo, so you can all open up your video. We'll have this beautiful, compassion shining on our face with Sister Moon. So open up your videos if you like to be in the photo. Okay, I got it. What do you, Manoj bhai?
Thank you so much for all your sympathetic and empathetic faces. Thank you. So let's move on to the meditation. And will it be some drishti or some commentary? What do you, Mr. Moira?
Right? You want a commentary? Yeah.
Few minutes commentary is great, no?
10 minutes, okay. Okay, so may we take a deep breath and may we turn inward to that sacred space behind our eyes to become fully aware of the shining light that I am. And I am aware of my human family all around the world, all in need of some form of help. So may I become that lighthouse that radiates love, unconditional love, that embraces souls wherever they are, igniting the light of hope, of courage, of tolerance, to be able to face whatever sort of facing, knowing that I'm an instrument of the Supreme. And as I am aware of who I am and who I belong to, in His divine presence, I allow the light of His love, His power to reach far and wide, all around the world, cleansing, fulfilling whatever need. I am an instrument. I am very peaceful and stable. I am not affected by situations, by circumstances. From my highest awareness, I am protected from pain, from sorrow. Thus I understand what others need. I am available through my powerful thoughts, through my pure feelings, in the form of vibrations. I'm able to touch their lives, allowing the feeling of being protected by the Supreme. I'm only a conduit, an instrument. I carry no burden. I am free. And all I have to do is remember who I am, who I belong to. And I'm available to anyone, anytime. Om Shanti.
Shanti, thank you so much once again for your words of wisdom.
Thank you, Manoj.
Thank you,
Send
Sister.
my love to everyone.